You cannot begin to imagine in how many ways the world is the opposite of what you have been taught to believe. You see the guy who sells drugs to willing customers so that he can feed his family as the scum of the earth, while you see the hypocrite who gives away stolen money in the name of government as a saint. You see the guy who tries to avoid being robbed by the federal thugs as a crook and a tax cheat, but see as virtuous the politician who gives away the same stolen loot to people to whom it does not belong. You see the cop as a good guy when he drags a man away from his friends and family and throws him in prison for 10 years for smoking a leaf, and you see anyone who defends themselves from such barbaric fascism as the lowest form of life, a cop killer. In reality, most drug dealers are more virtuous than any government social worker, and prostitutes have far less to be ashamed of than political whores because they trade only with what is rightfully theirs and only with those who want to trade with them. The upstanding, church-going, law-abiding, tax-paying citizen who votes Democrat or Republican or anything else is far more despicable and a bigger threat to humanity than the most promiscuous, drug-snorting hippie. Why? Because the hippie is willing to let others be free, and the voter is not. The damage done to society by bad habits and loose morality is nothing compared to the damage done to society by the self-righteous violence committed in the name of the state. You imagine yourselves to be charitable and tolerant when you are nothing of the sort. You think sitting in that big building on Sunday makes you noble and righteous? Going to church doesn't make you a good person any more than standing in a garage makes you a car. The difference between you and a common thief is that the thief has the honesty to commit crime himself, while you whine for government to do your stealing for you. The difference between you and the street thug is that the thug is open about the violence he commits, while you let others forcibly control your neighbors on your behalf. You advocate theft, harassment, assault, and even murder, but accept no responsibility for doing so. You old folks want the government to steal from your kids so you can get your monthly check. You parents want all your neighbors to be robbed to pay for your kids' schooling. It doesn't matter, Clinton, Trump, Bush, Bernie, or whatever puppet they throw in front of you. You all vote for whichever crook promises to steal money from the other people to pay for what you want. You demand that those people who engage in behaviors you don't approve of be dragged off and locked up, but feel no guilt for the countless lives your whims have destroyed. You liberals want everyone to give up their guns because you think that will make you safe. You conservatives don't want gays or women to have any rights at all because of some book written 2,000 years ago. You Bernie supporters want everything given to you for free. But the government cannot give anything to anyone without first taking away from someone else. Anyone who thinks they will be all right by having government take care of them better take a closer look at the Native Americans. You even call the government thugs your representatives, and yet you never take responsibility for the evil they commit. The U.S. government, starting with the Whiskey Rebellion in 1791, has used taxation to justify violence against society, fight senseless wars, buy votes, and enclose its iron fist around our lives. You proudly support the troops as they kill whoever the liars in D.C. tell them to kill, and you feel good about it. Because they are preserving our freedom, you say. Or they are freedom fighters, you say. Well, if crime fighters fight crime, and firefighters fight fires, what do freedom fighters do? Do you honestly believe that they are protecting our freedoms and liberties by traveling halfway across the world to kill a bunch of people that couldn't even point to America on a map, much less do anything to threaten it? You are told that these people are all extremists or terrorists because they practice a different religion than you or have a different culture than yours. It's real easy to advocate murder and genocide when the only things you know about these people is what you hear from ABC or Fox News. You call yourselves Christians or Jews or claim to follow some other religion, but the truth is what you call your religion is empty window dressing. What you truly worship, the God you really bow to, what you really believe in, is the state. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, unless of course you can do it by way of government. If you call it taxation and war, it stops being theft and murder, right? After all, it was only your God that said you shouldn't steal and murder, but the state said it was okay. It's pretty obvious which one outranks the other in your minds. Despite all the churches, synagogues, and mosques we see around us, this nation has one God, and only one God, and that God is called government. Jesus taught nonviolence and told you to love your neighbor, but the state encouraged you to vote for people who will use the violence of government to butt into every aspect of everyone else's life. Which do you believe? To those about to stone a woman who had committed adultery, Jesus said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." But the state says it's perfectly fine to lock someone up if they do something you find distasteful, such as prostitution. Which do you believe? You are not Christians, you are not Jews, you are not Muslims, and you certainly aren't atheists. You are all have the same God, and its name is government. You are all members of the most evil, insane, destructive cult in history. To you, the greatest sin is disobeying your God. Breaking the law, you call it, as if anyone could possibly have any moral obligation to obey the arbitrary commands and demands of the corrupt, lying, delusional megalomaniacs who infest every state in the country. Everywhere you turn, be it the state, the church, the media, or the schools, you are taught one thing above all else: the virtue of subjugating yourselves to mortals who claim to have the right to rule you. The vocabulary has changed a bit, but your mindset is no different from that of the groveling peasants who bowed low, faces in the dirt, with a feeling of unworthiness and humility when in the presence of whatever narcissist had declared himself to be their rightful lord and master. You watch Game of Thrones and feel sorry for the peasants in their two-class feudal society, and yet you are no different from them. We have Olympics and Super Bowls now instead of tourneys and feasts, but it's the same thing. The truth of the matter, back then and today, is that these parasites who call themselves leaders are not superior beings. They are not great men and women. They are not honorable. They're not even average. The people who earn an honest living, from sophisticated millionaire entrepreneurs to illiterate day laborers doing the most menial tasks you can imagine. The builders of America. Those who make her factories hum. The loggers of her great forests. The men who labor deep in her mines, and the man who works with his hands. The farmer who toils from dawn to dusk, and those who carry her bountiful yield to all. The railroaders, our merchant sailors, the airline pilots, and those modern knights of the road, the truck drivers. Those people deserve your respect. Those people you should treat with courtesy and civility. But the frauds who claim the right to rule you and demand your subservience and obedience, they deserve only your scorn and contempt. Those who seek so-called high office are the lowest of the low. Those like Hillary or Trump, they may dress better, have larger vocabularies, and do a better job of planning out and executing their schemes, but they are no better than pickpockets, muggers, and carjackers. In fact, they are worse because they don't want to just rob you of your possessions, they want to rob you of your very humanity, deprive you of your free will by slowly leeching away your ability to think, to judge, to act, reducing you to slaves in both body and mind. And still you insist on calling them leaders. Leaders? Where is it that you think you're going exactly that would require you to have a leader? If you just live your own life, mind your own damn business, exercising your own talents, pursuing your own dreams, striving to be what you believe you should be, what possible use would you have for a leader? Do you ever actually think about the words that you hear and the words that you repeat? You parrot oxymoronic terms such as the leader of the free world, or with the consent of the governed. There's no such thing. If it's consent, it's voluntary. If it's being governed, it's not voluntary. Another one is, we are the government. That is the most ridiculous and absurd term I have ever heard. Can you people not see the small group of people who issue threats, call them laws, and issue demands for money that they call taxes, and if you disobey, they send men with guns to hurt you? Are people really incapable of distinguishing between yourself and them? Even pretending for a moment that there is some huge journey or some giant battle that everyone in the entire nation is undertaking together that would require a leader, why would you ever think for a moment that the crooks that infest this country are the sort of people you should listen to or emulate or follow anywhere? Somewhere inside your mostly dormant brains, you know full well that politicians are all corrupt liars and thieves, opportunistic conmen, exploiters, and fearmongers. You think these crooks are the ones who make civilization possible? What belief could be more absurd? Yet, when they do their pseudo-religious rituals, deciding how to control you this week, you still call it law and continue to treat their arbitrary demands as if they were moral decrees from the gods that no decent person would consider disobeying. You have become so thoroughly indoctrinated into the cult of state worship that you are truly shocked when the occasional sane person states the bleeding obvious. The mere fact that the political crooks wrote something down and declared their threats to be law does not mean that any human being anywhere has the slightest moral obligation to obey them. Every moment of every day, in every location, in every situation, you have a moral obligation to do what you deem to be right, not what some delusional, bloated windbag says is legal. Just because something is legal does not mean it is right. You proclaim how proud you are to be law-abiding citizens and express your utter contempt for anyone who considers themselves above your so-called laws. Laws that are nothing more than the selfish whims of tyrants and thieves. The word crime once meant an act harmful to another person. Now it means disobedience to any one of the countless arbitrary commands coming from a parasitical criminal class. The very phrase, taking the law into your own hands, perfectly expresses what a sacrilege it is in your eyes for a mere human being to take upon himself the responsibility to judge right from wrong and to act accordingly. You speak with pious reverence of law enforcers, those who forcibly impose the politicians' every whim upon the rest of us, those cowards who are nothing more than glorified thugs, forcing their will on others and extorting money from anyone and everyone. When the state uses violence, you imagine it to be inherently righteous and just, and if anyone resists, they are in your eyes contemptible, low-life, lawless terrorist criminals. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who helped slaves escape the plantation. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who helped the Jews escape the killing machines of the Third Reich. Like the lawless terrorist criminals who were crushed to death under the tanks of the Red Chinese government in Tiananmen Square. Like all the lawless terrorist criminals who would not step aside at the Alamo and let the Mexican armies pass. Like all the lawless terrorist criminals who had the courage to disobey the never-ending stream of tyrants and oppressors who have called their violence authority and law. And that includes the lawless terrorist criminals who founded this country. Everything you think you know is upside down, backwards, and inside out. But what has to take the cake, the height of your insanity, is the fact that you view as violent terrorists the only people on the planet who oppose the initiation of violence against their fellow men. Anarchists, voluntarists, and libertarians. We use violence only to defend ourselves against someone who initiates violence against us. We use it for nothing else. Our philosophy is of personal and economic freedom. We seek to maximize autonomy and freedom of choice. We believe that every rational individual has the ability to make an informed and uncoerced decision. My personal creed is just this: I won't be wronged, I won't be insulted, I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them. Meanwhile, your belief system is completely schizophrenic and self-contradictory. On the one hand, you teach that violence is never the answer, yet out of the other side of your mouths, you advocate that everyone and everything, everywhere and at all times, be controlled, monitored, taxed, and regulated through the force of government. In short, you are teaching your children that the masters may use violence whenever they please, but the slaves should never resist. You indoctrinate your children into a life of unthinking, helpless subservience. And worst of all, you feel good about it. Out of one side of your mouths, you condemn the evils of fascism and socialism and lament the injustices of the regimes of Hitler and Stalin, while out of the other side of your mouths, you preach exactly what they did. The worship of the collective, the subjugation of every individual to that evil insanity that wears the deceptive label, the common good. You babble on and on about diversity and open-mindedness, and then beg your masters to regulate and control every aspect of everyone's lives, creating a giant herd of unthinking conformist drones. You wear different clothes and have different hairstyles, and you think that makes you different? Yet all your minds are enslaved to the same club of masters and controllers. You think what they tell you to think, and do what they tell you to do, while imagining yourselves to be progressive thinking and enlightened. Today's injustices and oppressions are fashionable and popular, and those who resist them, you tell yourselves, are just malcontents and freaks. People whose rights don't matter. People that deserve to be crushed under the boot of authority. Throughout history, the perpetual suffering and injustice occurring on an incomprehensible scale, it was all because of people just like you. The well-trained, thoroughly indoctrinated, conformists, the people who do what they're told, proudly bow to their masters, who follow the crowd, believing what everyone else believes and thinking whatever authority tells them to think. That is you. And your ignorance is not because the truth is not available to you. There have been radicals preaching it to you for thousands of years. Men like Socrates, Plato, George Orwell, and Larkin Rose. But you won't find the truth in the media, that's for sure. But Duke, information is so available, and we have freedom of the press, you'll say. Sure, there are 1,500 newspapers, 1,100 magazines, 9,000 radio stations, 1,500 TV stations, and 2,400 publishers, but they are all owned by only 5 corporations: Comcast, 21st Century Fox, Disney, Time Warner, and National Amusements, each of which is controlled by a single family. No, you are ignorant because you shun the truth with all your heart and soul. You close your eyes and run away when a hint of reality lands right in front of you. You condemn as extremists and label as kooks those who try to show you the chains you wear because you don't want to be free. You don't even want to be human. Responsibility and reality scare the hell out of you, so you cling tightly to your own enslavement and lash out at any who seek to free you from it. Well, some of us are finished with trying to save you. We've wasted enough effort trying to convince you that you should be free. All you ever do is spit back what your masters have taught you, that being free only leads to chaos and destruction, while being obedient and subservient leads to peace and prosperity. What does school really teach children, though? It teaches them that truth comes from authority, intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat, that accurate memory and repetition are rewarded, that non-compliance is punished, and to conform both intellectually and socially. You are told constantly what to do to succeed. Go to school. Do what you are told in school and you'll get good grades. Get good grades and you'll be able to go to college. Do what you are told in college and you will get a good job. Then spend 40% of your life doing what you are told at this job and use it to pay off your college debt, pay the debt on the house that you'll never own, and pay the taxes that will never end until you die, and everything starts all over with your children, thus continuing the never-ending cycle. You wake up each day and pop an antidepressant so that you can survive another day of oppression from the masters. You guzzle down all kinds of caffeine-induced drinks because you won't make it through the workday without them. You spend a third of your life at work producing for someone who you've never met and doesn't even know your name. Then you spend the rest of your day guzzling down alcohol to help you unwind from your day. You are completely addicted to prescription pills, caffeine, and alcohol and believe that's okay because your master said it was legal. But heaven forbid anyone smoke a leaf, use steroids, engage in prostitution, or any other just as self-destructive activity. The masters haven't declared that those are legal or safe for you, so anyone seen using or performing these should be persecuted. There are none so blind as those who will not see. And you nation of sheep, would rather die than see the truth. I leave you with this last thought. Government itself does no harm because it is a fictional entity. But the belief in government, the notion that some people actually have the moral right to rule over others, has caused immeasurable pain and suffering, injustice and oppression, enslavement and death.